What's going on, everyone? Welcome to today's stream. Obviously, you can hear my voice but cannot see my face. We are instead joined by a wonderful special guest, Simon Gersberg of Shot Quality. Welcome to the stream, Simon. Glad to have you here. So tell us a little bit about you and about Shot Quality. Yeah, so what is your... Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, so... Oh, you can't hear anything Simon is saying. That's not good. Okay, so we're going to have to redo that intro. You know, so the last time we did this, I had it set up, so we had Harrison on, and I think my audio was muted the whole time. So Simon, this is not on your end, this is on my end. You guys can hear me, right? They can hear me.
So
Okay. Okay, can you guys... Okay, yeah, now you guys should be good. I can see the soundbar moving.
okay, I think we're
Ben, sorry, can you talk again for a second?
test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so round two. So now that Simon has given us this wonderful intro that only Ben and I could hear, the wonders of doing all this stuff live. So Simon, once again, tell us a little bit about yourself and, and about Shot Quality.
The funny thing is like repeating it right now means nothing because I basically repeat it like every time I get in the podcast. So I'll just run it again.
Yeah.
So I'm a student at Colgate. Technically still a student at Colgate. I'm in the process of withdrawing to go full time on Shot Quality. But when I was a student at Colgate, I was working with the Colgate basketball team, working behind the bench, subjectively grading the quality of shots, which is where Shot Quality originally is rooted from. And then from there, after I was doing that process behind the bench, I found a way to automate it. And once I could automate it, it started blowing up in the college coaching community. And then after that, it just got a lot of interest with the betting community because a lot of the ways handicappers will handicap games is based off what they're seeing with the expected scores and the quality of shots that teams are getting and really looking at process over results, which is obviously always more predictive than just results.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you have, I guess, what kind of technology, I'm a little curious, do you have that allows you to automate this? Are you getting video footage from leagues or from television broadcasts?
So we're using play-by-play from like a few different sources. Yeah.
Larry, what do you mean shouldn't Colgate be better? Colgate was as good as possible last year.
Imagine if they weren't using Shot Quality. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
He probably bet on Colgate that in that first round because Arkansas covered, right?
Yeah, Colgate was
they
up,
did.
And then Arkansas came way back.
Really funny about that game. I had like my Shot Quality prediction of the game. It had Arkansas, and it was like the only like betting thing that I had Arkansas by more. And I was getting crap, and also because like people thought I would be biased because whatever, I'm from Colgate, but I was actually the algorithm thought Arkansas was going to win by more, and they did. So it kind of like reaffirmed that I'm not biased in my algorithm.
It's always good when Nick is a big Ravens fan, and that will happen at times where our model will go against the Ravens, and Nick's kind of like, well,
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of got to go with it.
Yeah, yeah. You can't pick and choose with these things, right, Simon? It's like you're either in or you're out. So
Totally.
So, and now you guys are working with, I think, over 30 college programs and then a few NBA teams?
Yeah, NBA teams is like a different platform because we're working where I was pitching to NBA teams about like like evaluating college prospects with our data, not as much
Nice.
actual shot quality stuff. Well, still shot quality stuff, but different type of
Yeah.
shot quality stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I found Simon and shot quality, I would say back in like January, February, somewhere around there. And I found it really interesting because, part of the thinking that, a lot of sports handicappers do is we try to find like the regression and try to find those value spots. And I think you guys nailed it, with effective or expected points, I should say, versus actual and things of that nature. So before we hop on into the NBA and what we saw last game and throughout the series, can you explain a little more to the audience just on, I guess it's one of your main metrics on how you guys more or less formulate that and how you decide, what's a good shot versus a bad shot?
So obviously it's automated, it's objective, it's not subjective, but the process is basically utilize over 90 different variables to quantify the individual shot making ability. So that's just from the individual shot perspective, but then looking from a team perspective and for the overall game, we're utilizing stuff like offensive rebound probability, foul probability, which are really, really important team variables because just say the Bucks in game 4 when they got 17 offensive rebounds, I believe, like it's obviously a higher end of the spectrum that you would expect for the Bucks to get against the Suns. So they were actually expected a little bit offensive rebound, negative regression in that game. But whatever, I'm going off tangent here. But yeah, the whole process, there's obviously so many different variables, and then it spits out the overall shot quality score, which is obviously down the road very predictive to actual winning and the actual score.
Totally. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're taking good shots, good quality shots, you're going to put yourself in a better position to win a game. And, the problem is, of course, figuring out what a good shot is, and that's where you guys kind of come in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's hop on into the series. Of course, Bucks, Suns. Surprisingly, this has been a really good series, and I wasn't quite expecting it because I thought the Suns were actually, well, I shouldn't say they were gonna just have a cakewalk because I did say Suns in 7, but kind of how this series has flipped because the Suns kind of they came out in the first 2 games, went up 2-0, right? And things kind of changed a little bit. So let's first talk about just the series as a whole and, maybe some of the takeaways that you've seen from what shot quality is showing from maybe earlier in the series to kind of where we're at now that kind of allowed the Bucks to maybe get back in this.
So the trend really started from game 2. Even when the Bucks lost, they were getting really, really high quality shots, and that was something the shot caller was picking up on. I think the actual win percent in the game was 88% based off the quality of possessions that the Bucks got against the Suns in game 2, despite losing by 10. So once we saw that trend, it was pretty obvious that they were a good bet for the next few games. And then game 3, game 4, game 5, they obviously dominated. But interesting enough, game 5 and game 1, the only 2 games that the Suns actually got higher quality of possessions. So game 1 was – this is crazy because once game 1 happened, so game 1 was the Bucks' worst loss in terms of quality of possessions all season long. So that was pretty crazy. And then to come back game 2, 3, and 4, and basically come back with these incredible performances was obviously something that's hard to predict for. So that was pretty interesting. And I think that just has a lot to do with what they're forcing the Suns to take in terms of shot selection. So I think the Suns are taking less corner threes. I think they're guarding DeAndre Ayton. I think they're getting DeAndre Ayton in foul trouble and then allowing to attack the paint more. So I think that's just good scheming up by Coach Bud for sure.
Yeah, and I've noticed with the Bucks offensively, and no surprise when they do have those high quality of shots, when they can get in the paint with Giannis and he can kind of do his thing. I mean, of course that number is going to go up. But one thing I wanted to ask you with the Suns, and specifically their shot quality numbers, I've noticed Chris Paul hasn't really had his way offensively. Maybe how it was with the Clippers and the Nuggets and Lakers with the pick and roll game. Do you think that's a lot to do with Drew Holiday, or do you think there's something more that's going on? Because I've heard these rumors about he's not 100% or this and that. But do you think it's mainly Drew Holiday more than anything?
Yeah, I think I think it's a combination between him maybe not being as fully healthy as he could be, and then Drew Holiday. In terms of like a shot quality perspective and what we can quantify for, games 1 and 5. This is a trend that Ben Taylor, the podcast I was on the other day, picked up on, which I thought was really interesting. Games 1 and 5, for the 2 games that Chris Paul had a shot quality points per possession percentile above the 68th percentile. So he was taking good shots in games 1 and 5, and those were the 2 games that the Suns were expected to win based on the quality of shots. So I think there's definitely a direct trend between Chris Paul getting good shots and creating good offense for the Suns to have a good chance of winning for sure.
So what do you think happened in that game 3? Because you said, right, the Suns were kind of expected to win, but based off shot quality, was it the Bucks just over exceeding offensively?
Wait, game 3 or game 5? Which one was that?
Game 3. Didn't you say game 3? Or you were saying game 5 was the one where the
5.
Suns were expected to win?
Yes, and that
was the close one. That was, of course,
that was the close one, and that was due to so a lot of people like talk about like mid-range, 3-point variance, and like being the only distinguishable factor when it comes to luck in a game. But I think this was one of the few examples where mid-range variance had a really impactful part in the quality of shots that both teams are getting in terms of luck. So the Suns in this game were expected. Just check this quickly. The Suns were expected 5 more points on mid-range, and the Bucks were expected 7 less points on mid-range, just based off the looks they got and the guys taking it. So that's Chris Paul missing easy shots, that's Devin Booker missing easy shots, and that's Giannis hitting tough shots. So in the long run, those aren't highly expected.
Yeah, I mean,
percentages.
Giannis had a few where there was one where he thought he got fouled. It was like off the glass. I'm sure you remember that one. Drew Holiday was making some tough ones too. Someone in our chat said Drew Holiday was not missing. He was hitting some tough ones too. And I kind of go back to the Clippers series and even the Nuggets series in those series where the Suns won. Chris Paul was hitting a lot of contested mid-range jumpers. And I don't necessarily know if it's him not taking those because of Drew Holiday or he's just kind of looking to Devin Booker. But Devin Booker's shot volume is super high in this series. Do you think that, for Chris Paul in particular, do you think he should be shooting more, if that makes sense? It's kind of a loaded question, right?
It is. And I don't necessarily think they need him to shoot more, but I think they need Devin Booker to pass more. I feel like he's obviously been pretty efficient the last 2 games and obviously dropped a 40-piece both, but his passing numbers, this is something else Ben Taylor picked up on, which I didn't. So in games 1 and 2, he created 15 points off his passes. In game 2, 13 points off his passes. Then games 3 to 5, the games that the Suns lost, the Suns lost, he averaged 4 passing points off his passes. So basically, you could see there's a direct trend there between him playmaking and actually creating shots for others and the Suns winning the game.
That's a really good point because I've noticed with the Suns offense, it's usually Chris Paul getting the ball to either Crowder or Bridges or, Ayton on the pick and roll. But if the ball goes to Booker from Chris Paul's hands, usually it's in a position where there's 10 seconds or less on the shot clock. So it's kind of, to what you're saying, maybe he needs to be more aggressive immediately and see if he can, spread the ball around versus him, just kind of, having to take that last shot, which he hasn't been terrible on. But, the margin for error is slim in the finals. So that's interesting. Another thing I wanted to ask you is with fatigue in the shot quality expected points, do you guys take any of that into consideration, a fatigue factor?
Yeah, so it's pretty minimal, but there is something embedded in the algorithm that incorporates fatigue.
Nice. I think that's good because one guy I wanted to touch on before we hop on into some picks for you guys is DeAndre Ayton. And I've noticed, especially the first quarter, he comes out very aggressive and maybe not so much the last two games, but earlier in the season or earlier in the series and then last series too as well. And then I notice he gets a little fatigued offensively. I don't know how much that's actually affecting his game, but I know it's been a thing for him. But have you noticed anything else that the Bucks are doing defensively to kind of slow him down at times?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it in terms of DeAndre has just been really getting him in foul trouble because the Suns have literally no other people in the front court. I mean, the guy that drafted Jalen Smith in the lottery hasn't played a single minute in the playoffs. So I think just being limited in the front court has just allowed the Bucks to either DeAndre fatigued or in foul trouble, and then by doing that, obviously he's a less valuable player overall.
That's a really good point because you're right. I mean, I think Jalen Smith, was he a Maryland guy?
Yeah, Maryland.
Yeah. He's not going to come off the bench, so it kind of puts the Suns into the position of do we leave Ayton out there or do we go small, right? It's kind of the toss up there. So that's a really good point. Yeah, that's something that they maybe got away with earlier in the playoffs, but could be kind of creeping up late in this series. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays tonight. So let's hop on in to some picks for you guys. I have two props I like. I believe Simon has two. And then you guys also have shot quality bets, which is basically kind of the the break off of shot quality. And you guys are you guys formulating these picks too as well from your algorithm?
Yeah, a lot of the prop stuff is just based off like the previous expected scores.
Gotcha.
So like if 5 games Brook Lopez has been expected X amount, but he's only scored this amount, you would expect for game 6. If the line's moving toward the actual results, we would like to move towards the expected results, obviously.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. And I feel like as a prop better for me, that's what I'm kind of looking at, right? I'm trying to find value, especially in the playoffs right now. The lines are super tight. They're very tight. There's only, of course, one game on. There's 2 teams left, so it's hard to find some crazy value. But I think I have one I really like. But yeah, we'll actually start with you. How about you give us your first prop that you like for tomorrow?
The one I really, really like is Giannis over. So I think from just a purely analytical shot quality perspective, so the over-under is 32.5, and just in the last games this year so far, he's been expected to score 37.5. And I think going home, so that's the analytical perspective. And then from just like a subjective, like a process from like just his mindset and what I saw in game 5, I just think I feel like he just wants to close this out. Like he just seems like he's like hit another level as a player. And I just think like he's going to have a special game because he knows this is his chance to win his first final and really cement his legacy.
If he can hit a few more free throws, that's a done deal.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So I have one, and I'm curious when I tell you. Can you guys look up these on the spot? What you guys show from last game?
Yeah.
Okay. So my first one is Chris Paul over 21.5 points. So my thinking for this one is, I mean, he was really close to that number last game. He hit 20, but I think tomorrow night, I think he's going to get to the foul line, and I think that I don't want to say the NBA desperately wants the Suns to win to make it a game 7, but they wouldn't mind it. And I think any 50-50 call Chris Paul's going to get in this one. So I think he's going to get some free throw attempts. I was looking at game 1 and 2 and 3. He got to the foul line a few times. Last 2, 0 free throw attempts. So I know it could only be 1 or 2 free throws, but that might be the difference here. And I think Chris Paul is really going to have to take the game over, especially if they get behind, and it's an elimination game for them. So that's my first bet I like. And I'm curious, what do the numbers say for last game and his expected point total?
So purely the numbers, it's really close to the. So last game, he was expected less than 21. He was only expected 17 and a
Mhm.
half, but that was mostly due to him hitting 3 threes. So that's where the expected will differentiate
Gotcha.
because he was actually expecting more on mid range. But whatever. Overall, as like the full series sample size, he's been expected to score 20 a game, so it's really close to the
Yeah.
21. Reason I actually like this from a non-shot quality perspective is because this is like another desperation like call, I think, because like this is Chris Paul. Like this is probably his only chance he'll ever be in the finals. This is his elimination game. Like I just feel like he'll show out and play well. Like that's just how I feel. So I would never ever like even if the shot quality says below, I'm not going to bet against that.
Yeah. And I like that you come from that perspective because here at Capwise, we try to do that as well. Like the numbers could say something, but we know that it's not 100% numbers. Like you have to take into consideration what's going on from the player standpoint, situational factors. So I'm so happy you said that because I think that's the best way to really formulate like a good brand and a good company. Chris Paul had 19 and 20 shot attempts in the first two games, and then that dropped to basically on average 14 in the last three. Is that more because of Devin Booker getting those shots more than anything? Do you think there's some correlation there?
Yeah, and I think it's Devin Booker taking more shots, then also maybe his injury, maybe he just wanted to pass a little more. I mean, his playmaking was pretty similar, but
Yeah.
yeah, he seemed to pass a little more in game 1 and 5 for sure.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, let's hop on in. Oh, yeah, by the way, I like the Giannis play a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. That was another one I actually had, and I was like, well, Simon had it too. But I had another one that I was right on the fence with along with that one. But let's hear your second prop you like for tomorrow.
So the other one is Brook Lopez over. So basically every game this series, he's been expected to score more than 11 and a half besides game 5. So game 5, he was only expected to score 9. He only took, I think, like 8 or 9 shots.
Mm-hmm.
But his overall expected average through the first 5 games has been 14.3. So that's a pretty significant difference to that 11 and a half. And also in the home games, just the home games, he averaged, let me do this math quickly, 13, 18. He averaged around like 15 and a half in just the home game. So basically, he gets the shots. I think it's really, I think if he takes 10 shots, I think he'll get it. Just based off his expected scores so far this series.
I do like that. The only thing that worries me is his minutes played because it has been a little up and down.
Has been, yeah.
But I think if we can say if we think he's going to get 25 minutes, I feel good about that one also.
It was interesting. He got 25 minutes in the most recent one, but didn't hit it.
That is
the other
true.
ones he got less minutes. But no, but it's illogical to think that would actually be a smart trend.
And that's probably why shot quality was showing. He was around like what you said 14 and a half last game was expected.
Only eight and a half last game.
Oh, that was last game.
Yeah. His series average has been 14 and a half.
Gotcha. Yeah. He's been a very interesting player to watch. I think partly because he's 6'11", but he kind of plays like a 3 guard, really.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he doesn't really play like a traditional center. So that leads me into my final pick. I like Brook Lopez under 4.5 rebounds, and this is at plus money. I'm showing plus 110. And I've been burned a few times by his rebound props, but I also have hit several. So I'm like, of course, I'm going back to the well with Brook Lopez on his rebounds. But, this is partly due to, I think, DeAndre Ayton. I think he's going to snag a few more of those boards. And it's not necessarily like Brook Lopez is a bad rebounder. He just doesn't really crash the boards. So it's kind of interesting. I've noticed, and maybe Simon, you have too. Sometimes he'll just fan out. He doesn't even, he acts like he's a guard and gets down the court to spot up versus crashing the board. But I guess it kind of works out for the Bucks because Giannis is in the paint. So
I think to build an argument for a rebounding prop, a lot of it has to be based off like the minutes. And so it depends on what you're expecting. Like, what do you think the reason was for Game 5 that he played his most minutes in the series? Because I can't even think of like, what was Bud trying to do?
That's a really good question because I'm looking at Game 2. He had 27, but other than that, yeah, he averages closer to that 20-22 mark. It's hard to say, and I mean, Bud is kind of one of those coaches that I sometimes quite don't understand what he's doing. So that's a real good question, but I guess it kind of worked out, but I don't know. I guess he had a +4 on his stat sheet. I'm actually not a big plus minus guy, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, this is going to be a close one. He's probably going to end up around like 4 or 5. He seems to always kind of hover around that number. But yeah, I'm going with that one. We had a few questions about the total and then the side. We can just kind of discuss that before we let you go. How you feel about the over-under? I'm showing like 221.5. And then I wanted just to see what the spread was updated. We can start with the total first. What are your thoughts on that?
So the average shot quality score in the series has been 225 for the entire series. So I think this is one where you just ignore the expected versus the actual and just don't bet it, because I think there's going to be more defense in this game and more hesitancy just being an elimination game. So I wouldn't touch this.
I agree.
But yeah.
Especially if the game's close, the refs are going to swallow their whistles. You could see like a 40-point fourth quarter, and it probably will be on pace to go for over that, I feel like, at some point. And then I think second half, you're going to see things kind of slow down and defense really tighten up. And then Bucks -5. Wow. It's a crazy line. I guess a lot of people think that they're going to close this out at home. What do you think? You think the Bucks get it done and cover?
This is like the one time, that I'm like, every other game I've been riding Buck spread, but this is the one I'm not touching, because this is the one where I'm just like, I think they're laying too much juice to the Bucks right now. Like game 3 made sense to be favored by that much because they were down 2-0 and there was a desperation factor. I think it was 4.5 in game 3. So that made a lot of sense, but this is too much for a game that's almost the Suns are the desperate team. So I'm not I definitely would lean Bucks, but I wouldn't touch it with that spread.
Gotcha. So you're thinking Suns cover, but Bucks probably win type thing.
But I wouldn't even bet the Suns.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say. I'm going to ask you this one kind of last loaded question before we let you go. So there was the narrative of the Suns being kind of overrated and that they had an easy, path to the finals. Is there anything that you guys saw with shot quality in the Lakers, Nuggets, and Clippers series? Of course, those 3 teams without, one of their best 2 players. But is there anything that you saw that kind of matched up with that narrative, so to speak, about the Suns having an easy path?
I think the Nuggets were a bad team. I think that was the one team where they just totally dominated every single game basically based off shot quality. But the Lakers series, I mean, first 3 games, I think they were down 2-1 and they were not getting good shots, and then I guess AD got hurt in that flip. But I mean, AD injury, Nuggets playing the Nuggets round 2. I think the Clippers were a legit good team even without Kawhi. That is crazy, but then Kawhi was hurt too.
Yeah.
But so it's definitely not the hardest path, but I still think they're a legit good team. Interesting enough, they were one of the, based off the quality of shots they got all season, they were one of the luckier teams on my website, just looking at quality of possessions versus the actual games won. They were basically ranked as the 6th best team in the NBA this season. So they weren't highly ranked on my site, but the Bucks were. The Bucks and the Jazz and Nets were always top 3 all season.
Also, I do think if the Nuggets had Jamal Murray, I think that would have been a really good series. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm a Nuggets fan, but we got outplayed. That, I mean, it was a sweep, and Ayton had his way, and I mean that was a classic series of Chris Paul just taking over offensively and then getting. I mean, he had so many open mid-range shots, or he could oop it to Ayton, or he could get Bridges and Crowder in the corner. Like it was pretty tough to watch as a Nuggets fan. And at that point, I'm like, hey, we're probably not going to win it all anyway. But it was kind of a tough pill to swallow just to watch that all kind of happen in a sweep.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate you hopping on. Yeah, hopefully we can do this again, especially when college basketball rolls around. Nick and I, that's probably one of our top sports. Our model did really well last year too with college basketball. So I think it would be fun to have you back on. Continue the success, man. Continue growing. I'm glad you made the decision to kind of pursue this full time and kind of step back from college. Because at that point, I mean, it's like, well, you got a good thing going. So, you know, what's really the point? Was that decision hard though?
It was pretty tough. I think it's just what's best for me at this point in time. So I always kind of felt that this was what I was going to ride with for sure.
Yeah.
Gonna chime in for a second as somebody else
Nick, go ahead.
who also dropped out of college, not directly to do this, but kind of for similar reasons. It's a tough choice, but can definitely be the right choice.
Totally. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, man, I really appreciate it again. We'll keep in touch. We'll have to see how tomorrow goes. I'm excited to see how these bets shape up. And, yeah, we'll see if maybe we get a game 7. And then we go from there. We'll see. But, yeah, I think
100%.
I think they're going to get the job done tomorrow. I really do. All right, man. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you later.
Totally. See you guys.